Hey, how's it going, everybody? Happy Tuesday. Hope you guys are having a great day. As I mentioned, it's Tuesday. Time for our first episode of Tuesday Toast to History. This is part of our new weekly series that we're going to do. And on our Tuesday Toast to History, we're going to look at the history of whiskey. Some of that is going to be maybe distilleries, some of that's going to be individuals that were part of that distilling operation. Some of it's just going to be history. From the origination of whiskey. But then you get into like America, whiskey is so interwoven into the very fabric of our existence as a country, from laws and rebellions and political scandals and wars and religions and politics, all sorts of things. We're going to just take little sound bites. We're going to look at those things. We're going to have a lot of fun talking about history and whiskey. Kip here, your whiskey tour guide. Let's get into it this evening. Did you know that the colonists on the East Coast, before we gained our independence, were actually making a first version of whiskey in this country, and it wasn't bourbon? It was actually rye whiskey. A lot of those colonists had migrated from Ireland and Scotland and brought with them the tradition and the art form of distillation, but there was no barley there. So, what they did is they took what was accessible to them and began to distill that, which was rye whiskey. Rye whiskey was actually our first whiskey produced in this country. But during the Revolutionary War, okay, which lasted from 1775 to 1783, 8 years, we began kind of that migration westward into today what we would call Kentucky, but it wasn't Kentucky at the time because Kentucky didn't get her statehood until 1792. It was actually a part of Western Virginia, the state of Virginia. And as we migrated there, a couple guys started then making distilling as a business, as an operation. The first that we know of that was the first to make a commercially licensed distillery in 1783 is this guy right here, Evan Williams. He is credited with the first commercial distillery there in the United States. A lot of the guys on the East Coast, they weren't operating at that time commercial distilleries. They were farmer distillers. They were farmers by trade and had basically, kind of what we would call like a homebrew kit or small stills that they would use at the end of the year for the excess grain, but they weren't actually producing and distilling whiskey as a business. Shortly after that, Elijah Craig in 1789 opened up his operation there in Kentucky. And then in 1812, Woodford Reserve started under the Old Pepper Distillery. Now, when it comes to the oldest, right? So then we weren't really registering. There were businesses, but we weren't registering. The first registered distillery in the United States was in 1866, place you may have heard of in the old dry county of Lynchburg, Tennessee. That's right, Mr. Jack Daniels, the first ever licensed distillery in the United States. And then if you're asking, the oldest running distillery in the United States, well, that gets claimed by Buffalo Trace. And nobody really argues it, but it's a little hairy because it wasn't Buffalo Trace until many years later. But from the way that they were kind of the bought and sold and name changes through distilling operations, they are considered the oldest operating distillery because they were one of those six distilleries that were able to continue to produce during national prohibition. So tonight we're going to make our toast to the first couple distilleries and the first registered distillery in the United States. What's in my glass? Well, you got to go with the first, right? Just a little bit of Evan Williams right here. Straight bourbon whiskey, 86 proof. Hope you guys enjoy. We'll see you next time. Cheers.